Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Joel Keenan. Thank you for coming. I cannot believe, there must be 300 people in this room. Thank you so much for coming. I'm an internist, a physician in York, Maine. I have a primary care practice here. I've been here for 22 years doing solo internal medicine. And I want to talk to you today about some of the things I've thought about. What I do for a living and what it's like for me and what it's like for you. What got me interested in this to begin with was this difference between lifespan and health span. Our lifespan is how long we live. Our health span is how long we're healthy. And ladies and gentlemen, for the 3.5 billion years or so that there has been life on Earth, those two numbers have always been the same. For insects and antelope and buffalo and porpoises, health span equaled lifespan. You were healthy as long as you lived, and then you died. For us humans, Homo sapiens, for all of our 300,000 year history, our health span and our lifespan were the same. We were healthy right up until the day we died, just about. All that changed 3 generations ago in the lives of our grandparents at the turn of the 20th century. Really, in the spectrum of time, just a few minutes ago. And I want to talk about what happened, because it was shocking, and it is affecting us to this day, and it accounts for this difference between how long we're healthy and how long we live. Right now, there's a big difference, about 15 years. The last decade or so of our lives, for you and I, if you just go based on experience and what you see and what you know, you kind of assume things aren't going to go well. You're going to get sicker and sicker, and life gets less and less fun, and finally, fed up, we die. That never used to be true. So what happened? A number of things, but above all, 3. About the turn of the century, in 1850, by the way, heart disease was non-existent. Less than 1% of people died from it. I'll have more to say about that in a minute. But here's what happened at the turn of the century. First, it was not Sean Connery's fault, but a sedentary lifestyle became the norm in the United States and around the world because of the automobile. We didn't have to move as much, and so we don't. 2, at the turn of the 20th century, fewer than 10% of the adult population smoked cigarettes. By 1960, 40% of all adults smoked cigarettes. You and I remember growing up in our parents' living rooms, those clouds of smoke in the air for most of us. We were all exposed to it. It's what our parents and our grandparents did. It was just common. It was done. 3rd, in 1895, 2 brothers in Battle Creek, Michigan, invented this, Kellogg's Corn Flakes. And that began the explosion of processed food in the American and Western diet, culminating in 1957 in its apotheosis, high fructose corn syrup. You and I grew up eating this food. Captain Crunch, Kellogg's Corn Flakes, Cheerios, Fruit Loops, ham and cheese on white bread with mayo. This was our diet. It had never been so. So that's why, by 1963, heart disease had become our leading cause of death, when 100 years prior, it was basically non-existent. We invented our leading cause of death. And it was a massive epidemic. From 1954 to 1957, Nebraska went through 9 U.S. senators. They couldn't keep the seat warm. People were dying right and left. It was astounding, and it was overwhelmingly because of those 3 changes I mentioned: sedentary lifestyle, the advent of smoking, and a change in what we eat. So above all, a change in what we eat and how we live. Those 2 things fundamentally changed in the 20th century, and we've been living with the consequences ever since. And that's ironic, isn't it? Because, you know, if I asked you folks when you came in here today, who here knows that eating healthy food and getting exercise are really, really good for you? We'd all raise our hand. We don't know that. Who doesn't know that? But we're not doing that. Oh, I'm doing it. No, you're not. And I'm not either. We're not doing it. The truth is, in the United States, 95% of us are fiber deficient, and 95% of us don't do a half hour of exercise every day. Ladies and gentlemen, we're all Americans. We can't agree on anything. 20% of Americans think Africa's a country. 95% of us are fiber deficient. That doesn't mean we're deficient in Metamucil or Senecot or Colace. We're deficient in plants. Only plants have fiber. Animals have no fiber, right? Only plants. We do not eat plants. Oh, yes, I do. I have green beans for dinner. Doesn't count. Hunter-gatherers ate 10 times the plants we eat. 10 times every day. Now, they had to run around a lot. They had higher metabolic demands. That's true. But please, still, wow, what a difference. 95% of us are not eating plants to the extent we should. And we're not getting the exercise we should. And that's kind of amazing, isn't it? Because we all know it's good for us, so what the heck is going on? Why is that? I've been thinking about that. And I think there are a few reasons, but I want to talk to you for the next few minutes about one that's personal to me, because I think we, physicians, doctors, and by that I mean primary care doctors like me, internists and family practice doctors, we have a lot to do with why you and I are not focused on eating healthy food and exercise. We have a lot to do with it. Here's what I mean. I remember when I was in med school, first year med student, and one of my colleagues, classmates, in the back row, the dermatology people always sat in the back row, they were so smart, raised his hand and said, "How come we don't have a course in nutrition?" I didn't ask that question. I was keeping my head down back then, believe me. The attending physician said, "Because God and everybody knows healthy food is good for you. You know what they don't know? The difference in mechanism of action between an angiotensin converting enzyme inhibitor and an angiotensin receptor blocker. How about focusing on that, ladies and gentlemen? Because if you do that for the next few years, you'll be glad you did, and your patients will too." In other words, learn your craft. Learn about the drugs you're going to prescribe for your patients. And we did. And you know what? He was right. I was glad I learned all that stuff. And my patients are glad too. When they come to see me and they need a drug for hypertension, I know what to prescribe and why. They don't know. They're not supposed to. How would they? I know. I went to med school and residency and I learned all that. But in focusing on that so narrowly, and American medical education is about two things above all: diagnosing disease and treating it with drugs. That's what I learned to do in those 7 years. By focusing on that so exclusively, we created a paradigm, didn't we? We doctors, a way of looking at health and disease, such that when you have a problem, your blood pressure's too high, you've got a cough, you're nauseous, you have diarrhea, you have constipation, you've got a headache, you call your doctor and say, "What drug can you give me to fix that?" And why do you do that? Because we taught you to do it. That's what we do for a living. We give drugs to solve problems. That's what we do, isn't it? And isn't it normal, isn't it just human nature that after decades of that, you would come to think, hey, when I got a problem, I'm going to call my doctor. Why? He might have a drug that will help me solve it. You got high cholesterol, I'll give you a statin. You got hypertension, I'll give you an ACE inhibitor. You have diarrhea, take Imodium. Constipation, take Senecot. There's a drug, you can't name something right now that I can't tell you what drug will solve it. They're all over the place. It's what we do. And so you and I have come to think about that. how to solve disease and how to regain health by taking drugs. That's our baseline thinking. And it's a big, big, big mistake. You know, the death rate from heart disease skyrocketed from nothing to 40% of the adult population. And it is still our leading cause of death today. 25% of adults die from heart disease. Why the drop? Because people quit smoking. That's one thing we got right. In the late 20th century, we said, hey, look, you got to put those cigarettes down. They're no good for you. And that worked. And by the way, how did it work? We taxed the bejesus out of cigarettes. I used to smoke. I used to drive up to New Hampshire and get a carton of Marlboro Lights for $11.
Yeah.
That was in the 1980s. It worked. But that's all we did. And sure enough, here we are today with heart disease and cancer, two diseases that were basically negligible in the 19th century, accounting for the vast majority of our deaths, yours and mine. And why is that? Because we never addressed the underlying problem. The problem was what changed at the beginning of the 20th century. We never addressed how we live, what kind of exercise we get, and what kind of food we eat. We always put that aside. Doesn't it sound familiar? You go to the doctor and you do all the things you do, get some refills, get some prescriptions, maybe a referral, set up a physical. And on the way out the door, I say to you, oh, and remember, eat some healthy food and get some exercise. And you look back and go, gotcha, we'll do. Hey, listen, I didn't mean it, and neither did you. It was an afterthought. Let's be honest. That's not what we've been focusing on. It isn't. And that's why we're not doing it, I think. I think that's a big part of the reason why. And it's a terrible mistake, ladies and gentlemen. We're completely missing the boat. We're getting sick and dying more and more and more. And ladies and gentlemen, we're the best at this problem. If you compare the United States to all of our compatriots in the developed world, Canada, New Zealand, Australia, England, France, Germany, Denmark, Sweden, Switzerland, Germany, we're the worst. Our lifespan is the shortest. Our prevalence of heart disease and stroke, of obesity and diabetes is the highest compared to our compatriots. You know what we're number one in? The one thing we're best at? Cost. We have the most expensive healthcare in the world. And we do the worst job. It's stunning if you think about it. Nobody's talking about this. You notice that? It's not even on the radar. You know why? Because medicine's driven by pharmaceutical industries, by drugs. That's what funded my medical education, the research papers that we read. They were all marketed. What's the latest drug that's going to save us all? It's the GLP-1 agonist, GLP-1 agonist. Ozempic, Wegovy, Mounjaro, Zepbound. These are the drugs that are going to make us all healthy. Just like 40 years ago, statins were the drugs that were going to make us all healthy. Well, they're not. These drugs will help us lose weight, and then instead of overweight people dying of heart disease and cancer, normal weight people will die of heart disease and cancer. That's what's going to happen for sure, because we haven't addressed the underlying problem. And I think that's what we really need to do. I think it would be so powerful. And here's the irony. You know, we're in a terrible mess right now. We're $36 trillion in debt in the United States. That's I don't even know what that number means. I remember when Reagan ran up a $3 trillion debt in the 1980s, and I thought, wow, that was nothing. We're in big trouble. You know why? One of the big reasons why the most expensive part of the federal budget is health care. We're spending all this money and it's not working. And here's the crazy irony, and it's really what I came here to tell you today. All this can be solved. We can live longer. We can make our health span equal our lifespan. We can save our country. just by eating healthy food, plants, and by getting real exercise. You want to know what exercise is? It's stuff you do that makes you short of breath. I'm just going to say that again because I got distracted too. Exercise is stuff you do that makes you short of breath. That's exercise. I know you might be thinking, isn't walking exercise? I don't want to go there. I don't want to criticize walking. That's not my point at all. But I do mean to say, and I've learned to say this because I've begun asking my patients, hey, when you do those workouts 3 days a week, how often do you get short of breath? And almost everybody tells me never. That's what they say. And I believe it. I believe it. You know? And I've talked to people about healthy food. People have told me they don't like water and they don't like plants. They don't like vegetables. I've heard that. And I get it. My reaction to that is, I understand that. I believe it. If you spend decades and decades not eating those foods and not drinking that beverage, you're not acclimated to it anymore. But my request is, my suggestion is, my proposal is, make that statement, I don't like vegetables, the beginning of the conversation, not the end. Let's go from there. Let's practice. I'm 66. I know I look like I'm 65, but I'm 66. And about 4 months ago, I started playing the piano. Got the little Hal Leonard, teach yourself piano thing. A little electric piano I have at home. My wife is a saint. She listens to me practice every night for a half hour. I've been learning 3 songs in those 4 months, just 3.
Mary had a little lamb.
Well, almost. I'm going to put that on my to-do list. Over the Rainbow, Someone to Watch Over Me, and Fly Me to the Moon. 3 beautiful songs, right? Beautiful songs.
Have yourself a Merry Little Christmas.
And that too I was going to do. And I can tell you, having worked on that a half hour a day for 4 months, finally, I am very bad at those 4 songs. I am. I'm just beginning, And you folks know if you've picked up an instrument or tried to learn a foreign language, it is slow going. It just is, right? We don't beat ourselves up for that. We get it. We know it. What's this got to do with my talk today? Well, listen, if you try some baby kale in a restaurant and you don't like it, that was terrible. I don't like kale. Geez, give it a chance. This is important what we're trying to do. Don't just give up on a whole category of food because you didn't like one dish on Tuesday. It might take some doing. My wife loves the flavor of chlorophyll. Can you believe that? I have trouble believing it. But I know she does because she's been eating that food for decades and now she craves it, And when I hear her say that to me, someone who doesn't love chlorophyll, I think, yeah, I bet practice is helpful here. Practice exercising. Practice eating healthy food. Keep practicing. Be kind to yourself. Give yourself a chance. So I want to talk about the evidence that there is, just briefly, a couple of minutes. To show you 5 studies that are just breathtaking for how powerful these 2 interventions are, eating plants and getting exercise. When it comes to a healthy diet, there's a lot of argument about that sometimes, right? People say, I need a lot of protein, or you got to eat meat. We need to be like hunter-gatherers. I'll say more about that in a minute. I did a nutrition master's program just to sort of learn more about that. And my takeaway from all the reading and thinking about that I did is, listen, just please quadruple your intake of plants, and you'll be in a really good place. You'll be fast approaching what our hunter-gatherer ancestors were born and bred to do. They survived on plants, above all. Animals run away, plants don't. Plants were a fundamental part of the hunter-gatherer diet. So increase your intake of plant and don't worry about protein. Everybody's saying, oh my God, we're all... Ladies and gentlemen, we are at the top of the heap for protein intake around the world. Only Finland has more because they eat so much fish. We're not at risk for protein deficiency. You never will be if you're eating healthy food. It's not possible. Okay, so that's really what I want to say about that. Okay, what about hunter-gatherers? The argument goes, they eat meat, we should eat meat, we want to be just like them, we are just like them, those are our ancestors, and that's a great argument, you would think. But really, it's not a great argument. Hunter-gatherers and us did not have a lot in common, because above all, they needed calories, didn't they? They were in search for survival every day. That's what they needed, calories. And do we need calories? No, that's not our problem. 3/4 of us are overweight or obese, and even those of us of normal, healthy weight, I'm technically of a healthy weight. No, I've got more fat right here than I need. That's all I'm going to say about that. Don't worry, I won't show you. But I'm telling you, this is a really common problem. Most of us have it. We're not challenged by finding calories. We've got all the calories we need. What's that got to do with meat? Let me show you. Look at this slide. This is the same number of grams of 3 different kinds of food. Animal food, starchy vegetables, non-starchy vegetables, and fruit. And look at the difference in calories. Animal food, chicken, poultry, fish, pork, beef, all of them have 4 times the calories that non-starchy vegetables and fruit have. Does that mean you can't eat meat at all? No, it doesn't. Does it mean you don't need to eat meat? Yes, it does. You do not need to eat meat. And for a lot of us, eating meat is a problem because we're getting more calories than we need. And you're familiar with that argument, oh, you need to eat meat to get protein. That's just a complete myth. All plant food has all 20 amino acids. Ladies and gentlemen, plants invented protein. There would be no protein if it weren't. All protein comes from plants. No plants, no protein. They're the ones who make it to begin with. And then we eat it and we make more protein once we've got the essential amino acids from the plants. So plants are a great source of protein. Okay. Let me tell you about 5 studies, really briefly. This is going to take no more than 5 minutes. 2 about exercise that are really remarkable. One is, they did a group, this was just published last November, a group of, really 2 groups. One group who were aerobically fit, who did a lot of aerobic exercise, and another group who aerobically unfit, they didn't do any exercise. And they compared what happened in those 2 groups in terms of death and disease. And they also noted within each group who was of normal weight, who was overweight, and who was obese. And what did they find? Who was at risk for death and disease the most? Only the aerobically unfit people. The aerobically fit people did great, no matter what they weighed. It is fitness, not fatness, that matters. Fitness. It's exercise that keeps you healthy and gets you healthy. Really powerful study. One more I'm going to show you. This was published in 2018, looked at 120,000 adults, and it's my favorite slide. I know, look how boring that is, but here's what it shows you. Here's risk of death over here. Really high risk and no risk. Here's exercise over here. No exercise, elite athlete exercise. And it's showing the relationship between the 2. And what does it show? The more exercise you do, the less your risk of death and disease. And 2 things I love about this. One, notice it never plateaus. The more exercise you do, the better. It just keeps serving you. And 2, you might think, oh my God, now I got to be an elite athlete to be healthy? This is awful. Nope. The other thing this shows is the people who benefited the most were the people who went from no exercise to below average exercise. They benefited the most. That's great news. That means if you're sedentary, like so many of us are, just get moving and good things happen right away. Really encouraging study. What about food? just to summarize regarding exercise, it prevents disease, it treats disease, it makes you feel better as you get older. It's just staggering how powerful it is, ladies and gentlemen. Exercise is more effective at preventing disease than quitting smoking. That's what the first of those 2 studies showed. Just shocking. I never would have believed it, but it's true. Does not mean you should go light up a cigarette. You take that point, right? Okay. What about, are you starting to feel like this guy here? Are you still with me? This is my favorite slide. I don't have to explain why. Isn't that adorable? Okay, 3 studies about what happens when you combine healthy food and exercise. I'm going to tell you about all 3 of those in under 1 minute. Ready? This was a 2010 study of 13,000 adults, and this was a 2014 study of 21,000 men, and this was a 2015 study of almost 90,000 women. And all 3 studies asked the same question. What happens if you do regular exercise every day and you eat plants, you eat a Mediterranean diet or something like it, and you don't smoke, and you get 7 hours of sleep at night, and you maintain a normal blood pressure and a normal cholesterol? What happens to those people who above all do those 2 things, eat healthy food and exercise, and compare it to the group that does none of those things? What's the difference in the risk for heart disease, for heart attack? The difference is a 90% risk reduction for the people who do those things. 90%. Ladies and gentlemen, the most effective medicine in the world is aspirin. For people who need it, it reduces your risk of heart attack by 1/3. Nothing comes close to what healthy food and exercise do. Nothing. It's really extraordinary. It's really powerful. And, I wanted to talk to you folks about this because I've come to understand that doctors like me, we've got to stop giving short shrift to this stuff, because this is the heart of the problem. And until we do this, you and I, this will not get solved. We're going to keep getting sick, and we're going to keep dying from things that we don't have to get sick and die from. It will not stop. We tried the prescription medicine route to make people better. It doesn't work. I'm not saying don't prescribe drugs. It's what I do for a living. I'm not going to stop doing that. But I am going to acknowledge that it is completely pointless, absent those 2 fundamental aspects of a healthy life: healthy food and exercise. I'll close with this thought. One of the things I've learned from my wife, I've learned a lot of things from my wife. She's the one who got me interested in food in the first place. It's funny, I'm the one with the master's degree. I could get 40 master's degree, I won't know half of what she knows about food. One of the things I've learned from her is that it's really important to listen when your spouse is talking to you. It's really important. And some of us men, and I'm in this group, are just not terribly good at it, and we have to practice and learn and really try. And it's worth it, because that's where connection and trust and intimacy and caring really reside, in truly being attentive to one another. And it takes practice, but you know what I'm saying. You all know this to be true. I know you do. Our headaches, our fatigue, our anxiety, our depression, our aches and pains, our diarrhea, our constipation, our insomnia. These are conversations our bodies are trying to have with us. They're saying, please help me. Please listen. I need help. And what they're asking for is what our ancestors thrived on for hundreds of thousands of years. They're asking for real food and for real exercise every day. It's what you and I were born to do. And we can't ignore that. And the lovely truth is, it's shocking. you know, all these problems we've created. We've decimated the planet, raising animals to be our food. We've bankrupted our country. We have terrible problems, and so many of them can be solved. You'd think in order to solve these problems, oh my God, we're gonna have to work 12 hours a day, 6 days a week. We're gonna have to have an austerity government for 20 years. We're gonna have to cancel Medicare and Social Security. No, we don't have to do any of these things. We've got to eat some broccoli and get some exercise every day. How much? The more the better. We've got to be serious about it. We've got to actually do it. But if we do, oh my God, the benefit that accrues. We help ourselves, we help the world, we help the United States. What the heck? This really ought to be front and center, you know?
How much broccoli?
Huh?
How much broccoli?
Yeah, how much? I said at the beginning, my ballpark advice is whatever your vegetable intake is, quadruple it. Or another way to look at it is lunch and dinner, those two meals should be overwhelmingly at least 3/4 of the plate vegetables, plants. You can include that in those plants, legumes, nuts and seeds. Absolutely, put it all in that group. But you and I all grew up thinking the same thing about food. A healthy dinner was an entree and a side of vegetables. It just is not so. It's the opposite of what we need. We need vegetables and maybe a side of entree. But we need vegetables. We do that and just wonderful things happen. We live a little bit longer, but much more important, the whole time we're alive, we feel so good. And, you know, some of you might be thinking, oh, heck, I'm 70, I'm 80, I'm 90 years old, it's too late. Nope, that's the shocking truth. Nope, it's not. You can start doing this at any age, and it works as soon as you start. It's amazing how fast your body says, thank you, thank you, thank you. And you start accruing the benefits. You're sleeping better, you're feeling better, you've got more energy, you've got better focus. You're more optimistic. You're more connected. Good stuff. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you.